From an 18th century ice cream stand to the target of a terrifying modern bombing plot, the People's House just survived a brush with catastrophe.
Yeah, when you look at the raw chemicals they found, it defies logic that we aren't talking about a mass casualty event right now.
We are talking about homemade bombs, chaotic street brawls, and federal terrorism probes all crashing together on the Upper East Side.
And this all just unfolded a few days ago, on Saturday, March 7th, 2026.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are so glad you're joining us today.
We really are. We have a massive stack of sources to go through.
Our mission today is to unpack exactly what happened on that Saturday outside Gracie Mansion, which is the official home of the New York City mayor.
Right. We're going to use our sources to explore the vast powers of the mayor, the honestly bizarre history of Gracie Mansion, and the strict federal laws around attacking public officials.
And, of course, we are going to break down the chilling details of this thwarted bomb attack. But first, we have a very important note for you.
Yes, we need to be crystal clear about the nature of this information.
Today's deep dive involves some highly charged political content. The sources detail actions by both far-right demonstrators and alleged ISIS-inspired extremists.
And we must explicitly state to you, our listener, that we are not taking any sides here.
Exactly. We are not endorsing any viewpoints from any groups. We are purely reporting the facts from the original source material.
Our goal is just to help you understand the mechanics and the reality of this crazy event, leaving all the politics at the door.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's really easy to think of a mayor as just a local guy who fixes potholes and cuts ribbons.
Oh, absolutely. But the mayor of New York City is entirely different. It's a massive, highly visible target.
Why is this specific office so incredibly powerful?
Well, political scientists actually call the New York City mayoralty the second toughest job in America.
Right behind the president.
Exactly. And the statistics from our sources are just staggering. For the 2026 fiscal year, the mayor controls a budget of $115.9 billion.
Wow. $115 billion. That is larger than the entire economies of some actual countries.
It really is. And they also oversee 325,000 city employees.
That is an army of workers.
Yeah, plus they manage a public school system that has 1.1 million students. And on top of that, the mayor can just unilaterally appoint or fire the heads of over 40 city agencies.
Like the police and fire commissioners.
Right.
That sounds like they are basically a king. Do they have any checks on that power?
They do, though they aren't used very often. They have strict term limits, so they can only serve 2 four-year terms.
Okay.
And the governor of New York actually has the power to remove the mayor for misconduct.
Our sources also mentioned something called the Inability Committee, which sounds straight out of a spy movie.
It is such a weird bureaucratic failsafe. It's a special 5-member committee of high-ranking city officials.
And they can just vote the mayor out.
Basically, if they decide the mayor is unfit to serve, they can formally refer them for removal. But the wild part is, this process has literally never been used.
It's just sitting behind emergency glass.
Exactly. Untouched.
So you have all this massive executive power concentrated in one office. And that power physically lives at Gracie Mansion.
The People's House.
Right. But I was looking at the history of the mansion, and I couldn't believe it wasn't always this heavily guarded fortress. It has such a weird history.
People assume it was built for politicians, but its origins are super modest.
It was built in 1799 by a merchant named Archibald Gracie. Alexander Hamilton actually used to hang out there.
But then there's this huge gap where the building was completely neglected.
Yeah, the city seized it in 1896 because of unpaid taxes.
Oh.
And this is the part that literally had me laughing out loud.
The ice cream stand phase.
Yes. The home of the most powerful local government in America was used as an ice cream stand and a public toilet. People paid 5 cents to use the bathroom there.
It is the ultimate New York real estate story. It wasn't until 1942 that Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia actually moved his family in.
And he called it Gracie Farm to sound humble.
Even though everyone calls it the Little White House now.
Right. But the modern history is just as traumatic. Before the current mayor moved in, former Mayor Eric Adams lived there.
And he claimed the place was haunted.
Which his wife backed up. She said she heard whispers and saw doors opening on their own. Plus, federal agents searched the house before Adams was indicted.
So it's already this intense, heavily scrutinized place. And current mayor Zohran Mamdani just moved in with his family in early 2026. What's fascinating here is how this historic home, this old ice cream stand and haunted house, suddenly became a flashpoint for extreme modern violence.
So let's look at Saturday, March 7th. the spark for all of this.
The scene outside the gates was incredibly tense.
A far-right influencer named Jake Lang organized a protest, and Lang actually received clemency for charges related to the January 6th Capitol riot.
He called this event a protest to stop the Islamic takeover of New York City.
Which is incredibly inflammatory, especially in a diverse place like the Upper East Side.
Right, so a massive counter-reaction was totally inevitable. Lang showed up with about 20 supporters.
But the counter-protest swelled to over 125 people.
So you have these two angry groups packed into a tight space. And the NYPD reports show it devolved into a chaotic street brawl really fast.
We're talking fistfights, people throwing raw eggs. Someone even sprayed pepper spray right into the crowd.
It was messy and violent, but unfortunately that's still somewhat typical for a street clash.
Until the teenagers showed up.
Yes, this is where the narrative shifts entirely. While everyone is distracted by the pepper spray, two young guys from Pennsylvania step up.
18-year-old Emir Balat and 19-year-old Ibrahim Kayumi.
They drove in from out of state, and they brought homemade bombs.
I really want to break down the timeline of the attack here because the physics of this are just a miracle.
It really is.
So, amidst all the shouting, Balat pulls out the first bomb, he lights the fuse, and he throws it right at the police officers in the crowd.
The device is flying through the air.
And it hits a crosswalk barrier, just feet away from the cops.
Yeah.
And miraculously, the fuse just extinguishes.
The impact with that metal barrier acted like a snuffer. It either broke the fuse inside or severed it, making the bomb a complete dud.
Balat sees it didn't blow up. He panics, grabs a second bomb from Kayumi, and lights it.
But then he just fumbles it. He drops the lit bomb onto the pavement and runs away.
At first, people in the crowd thought they were just smoke bombs or some kind of hoax.
But NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch confirmed very quickly that these were real. They were viable, lethal, improvised, explosive devices.
Here's where it gets really interesting. And honestly, terrifying. When you look at what was inside these bombs,
the chemistry alone is why this became a massive federal issue immediately.
They used glass jars. And inside the jars was a highly explosive chemical called TATP, triacetone triperoxide.
They wrapped the glass in black tape and filled it with metal shrapnel, nuts, bolts, and screws.
And they used an M80-style hobby fuse to light it.
Which relies on black powder. It's very sensitive to blunt impact, which is probably why hitting the barrier saved everyone's lives.
But that TATP chemical is what the sources really highlight. That is the exact same explosive used in the Paris and Brussels terror attacks.
Bomb makers actually call it the mother of Satan because it is so unstable.
It explodes just from friction or heat.
The fact that these teens mixed it, drove it from Pennsylvania to New York, and threw it without blowing themselves up is a huge statistical anomaly.
And the bombs weren't the only link to international terrorism.
No, the behavioral flags were everywhere.
Verified videos show one of the suspects yelling Allahu Akbar right as he threw the bomb. And during questioning, they allegedly mentioned ISIS.
Investigators instantly pulled their travel logs. Balat had spent months in Istanbul in 2025.
And Kayumi went to Istanbul in 2024 and then to Saudi Arabia.
You have the specific chemical used by international terror cells, mentions of ISIS, and recent travel to targeted regions.
It was the perfect storm.
Which means this was no longer just an NYPD issue. The FBI and the Joint Terrorism Task Force took over instantly.
They locked down the area and started writing search warrants for Pennsylvania and New Jersey.
Which brings us perfectly to the legal fallout.
Right. Throwing a punch at a protest is a local crime. Throwing a shrapnel bomb at the mayor's house is a whole different ballgame.
We have a great breakdown from the Patatus and Associates law firm. They explain how federal assault laws work.
It really depends on who you target and where you are, right?
Exactly. If you fight a random guy on the street, the local cops handle it. But if you target a federal employee, a high-ranking official, or their families, the federal government steps in with a hammer.
The laws are designed to protect the actual machinery of our democracy.
Simple assault without contact might just be a year in prison.
But these guys used a deadly weapon. They threw a glass jar full of explosive TATP and metal screws.
That pushes the penalty straight up to 20 years in federal prison.
And that's just for the assault. That doesn't even count the terrorism charges or transporting explosives across state lines.
The aggregate prison time they are facing is astronomical.
So how did the city react to all of this? Mayor Mamdani released a statement, and he was very deliberate.
He issued a dual condemnation.
Right. He blasted Jake Lang's far-right protest, calling it rooted in bigotry and racism.
But he also drew a hard line on the bombing attempt. He called the violence criminal and reprehensible.
He also praised the NYPD officers who ran toward the bomb, instead of running away to take cover.
We also have a source showing the public's reaction in real time. There's a big Reddit thread from the NYC subreddit.
It gives you a really raw look at how regular citizens processed this near miss.
And honestly, it shows how deeply polarized we are.
People were arguing instantly. One faction of commenters said that because Jake Lang organized this inflammatory anti-Islam rally, he provoked the attack.
Basically arguing he brought the violence on himself.
But the pushback was fierce. Others correctly pointed out that a shrapnel bomb doesn't check your voter registration.
A bomb is just a bomb. It could have killed cops, journalists, or completely innocent neighbors.
They argued that throwing explosives into a crowd is pure terrorism, no matter how much you hate the speaker.
It just shows that even after a literal bomb attack, something that usually unifies a city, people just instantly split into political factions.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it exposes how fragile public safety is right now.
We have an 18th century ice cream stand turned mansion, local protests, global terror methods, and federal law all crashing together on one corner.
The threats our leaders face aren't just local complaints about taxes anymore. They're tied to international ideologies triggered by local friction.
It shows how a simple headline about a thrown object actually masks massive federal investigations and political shockwaves.
It really forces us to look differently at the public spaces we share.
Which brings us to our final thought for you to explore on your own.
We talked about how the mayor can be removed by an internal committee or the governor.
But what happens to the stability of a city when the real threat comes from extreme external polarization?
Will historic landmarks like the People's House have to permanently close their gates?
Will the places where our local leaders live and work have to become impenetrable fortresses?
It is a profound question about the future of open democracy.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking the hard questions, keep looking past the headlines, and we will catch you next time.